guys, I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the Watchmen.
The men who watch.
If it's on a screen, we're watching it, talking about it, and sharing our thoughts about it with you guys.
Today we are going to review a 6-season series that is available on Amazon Prime called The Americans.
Yes, this is a show that really, because of this show that we're doing, I ended up watching, and I'm glad I did, and we'll get into all of that. But before we do, I just want to thank all the people who are watching us on YouTube. Thanks for your support. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss a future episode. And for everybody listening on our podcast, thank you for your support, and we hope to hear from you soon about future content. But we appreciate you just being along for the ride. So let's get into this. I'll actually read the synopsis on this one. And so, The Americans is an American period spy thriller television series created by Joe Weisberg for the FX television network. Set during the Cold War, it follows the story of Elizabeth, played by Keri Russell, and Phillip Jennings, played by Matthew Rhys. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Matthew Rhys.
Matthew Rhys. Yeah. Two Soviet KGB officers posing as an American married couple living in Falls Church, a Virginia suburb of Washington, D.C., with their children Paige, played by Holly Taylor, and Henry, Kydrick Salati. The show also explores the conflict between Washington's FBI office and the KGB Residentura by following the perspectives of agents on both sides, including the Jennings' neighbor, Stan Beeman, played by Noah Emmerich, who looks a lot like our friend Byron, in my opinion, an FBI agent working in counterintelligence. The series begins in the aftermath of the inauguration of President Ronald Reagan in January 1981 and concludes in December 1987, shortly before the leaders of the United States and the Soviet Union signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, pretty much starting the end of the Cold War. So, as you said, 6 seasons. And again, for me, just to start off, I did not know anything about this show. There have been so many TV shows, as we've discussed before, that it's hard to get into a show sometimes. I mean, I missed the big shows that everybody was talking about, like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. It took me a while to get onto those. So these other shows, which are kind of, quote, smaller shows, but nonetheless good, sometimes I'd hear the name, sounds interesting, but never jumped on it. So it wasn't until we started doing this show that you brought it up as a show that you recommended, and I believe my sister started watching it, and I did as well. So I was actually able to finally blast through the whole thing in just a period of a few weeks. Lots of binge watching.
What did your girls think?
Moment. We'll get into that. This is not a show for your kids unless you let them watch very disturbing violence, sex, and other mature content. This is definitely an adult show, but it's a very good one, and it kept me engaged throughout. I'm glad I got to catch this show that I had not known anything about until you talked about it. So how did you get into this show? Did you get it when it was on the air, or did you catch on to it later after it had already been sort of...
So back when the show started, my brother-in-law, Scott, had recommended it. He and his wife, Julie, had been watching it, and he had mentioned that they really like it a lot. And I think that got it on my radar. And so I bought the first season on Blu-ray, and Cynthia and I started watching it, and I really liked it. And we got into season 2, and it was one of those times where... Well, we had our children were a lot younger. There was a lot more going on, and we just stopped watching it. And it wasn't because it wasn't good. We just
life got in the way.
When we're watching it together, it's hard sometimes to coordinate schedules to get together to watch show in the evenings, and so we just quit. And what I really have to thank for it is when they came out with the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood movie that came out last December, starring Tom Hanks and Matthew Rhys. And when I saw that, I realized Matthew Rhys was in the movie, and I remembered, he's from The Americans. And it was after that I thought, you know what? I've got to get back into this. I got to get back into this because I liked that show. I didn't stop because I didn't. And then I saw it was available on Amazon Prime, and I was actually happy about that because I didn't even purchase the rest of the seasons. And I was actually kind of mad because they came out with season 1 on Blu-ray, and then season 2 was DVD only. And that really irritated me because I'm I like high def quality in my shows. And clearly with the physical disc medium falling by the wayside when it comes to making money for studios, they decided to get cheap and only release season 2, 3, 4, and 5 and the rest of them on DVD. And that made me very irritated. So
yeah, that makes no sense that they would have a really nice looking visual show like The Americans only on DVD, but then they'll do a 4K UHD of an 86 movie called Rad.
Yeah.
See, that's what I don't understand.
Comes down to money.
Yeah, yes.
You know, when they're sitting around the board meeting and they say, well, if we do a DVD release only, we can save this much money. And our indications say that more people are buying DVD than Blu-ray anyway, which we have heard that. And so they felt it was a more profitable move for them. A huge sacrifice in quality, but they're looking at numbers. And the numbers are most people prefer DVDs because they're cheaper. And they don't care about quality. Sadly, I don't quite get that, but I'm a filmmaker, so I do care about quality. So that may have been one reason, I don't know, that may have been a subconscious reason why I stopped.
How many years went between watching the first season on Blu-ray and then getting back into it again? How long was the time that elapsed?
I think 5-6 years, maybe something.
Oh, so it was early on, and then the season pretty much went to completion, and then you jump back in on the Amazon Prime side.
Yeah, they were making it when I was watching it. So it was being made, but I didn't have access to FX, so I was watching it off the discs. But when I saw it was on Amazon Prime and it was in high def on Amazon Prime, I was like, okay, good. So I got back into it, and I told my wife Cynthia, I said, I'm going to get back into the show. I'm just going to watch it on my own because I really liked it, and I'm just gonna try to hit it hard. And it was so good, I told her she really should watch it too. And so she started watching it, she caught up to me, and then we finished it together. So we started it together and finished it together. So it was a good story with a good ending. And of course, I was talking to you about it, saying, man, this is really good. It's really good. And I got the typical, okay, from you, because I know I said in all respect, it's hard to get someone to watch a show you're watching because there's so many shows. Mm-hmm. So I know that when I said, hey, Norb, The Americans is really good, I know you're thinking it probably is, but I have this list of stuff I'm watching, like Ozark and all the other things, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. Walking Dead. I mean, there was this, and you don't stop because you don't like the show anymore. A lot of times you stop because something else gets busy, and then next thing you know, you're missing episodes, and it's like, I'm way behind now. But just so you guys know, before we get into some of the more detailed analysis of the movie, we're going to break this up. We don't normally do it this way, but I think because this is still a relatively new show in the sense that we're not talking 80s and stuff like that. This is, still, some of you may have not watched it. We want you to know about what it is. And for those who are going to watch it and don't want to be spoiled by some of the things we talk about, we're going to make this a spoiler-free version for the first part. Spoiler. We're going to make it spoiler-free for the first section, and then we're going to distinctively say, okay, from this point now, we're going to talk about some of the plot points and the ending. So if you don't want to hear about what happens and you want to watch this show completely without being spoiled on where it goes, you can tune out and then come back and listen to what we thought about it afterwards if you do watch the show. So we wanted to spare you guys that because it's a show that we would not want to ruin for you if you do plan to watch it. So that's how we're going to talk about it. So I guess that's what we'll do. We'll talk just in generalities about what we like about the show and kind of the feel, so that way it'll intrigue you enough, and then we'll go into more detailed plot analysis.
I'll start real quick with just one thing I really love about this series is, and I love the 80s, is that it takes place in the 80s, but I know as I described it to you, I described it as what I call, quote, real 80s. It's a lot of movies that take place in the 80s, they supercharge the bright colors and they over exaggerate everything from hair to makeup to backgrounds to where it's really overdone, in my opinion. It's an idea of what the 80s could have been, but this to me is real 80s, and you notice it in the subtle things like necklaces that Elizabeth is wearing, or little engrams on her sweater, and even like when they were in McDonald's, the McDonald's cups I was like, oh yeah, that's what they look like.
Yeah, the logo was different. Yeah.
And so even when they're eating food, or even the cereal boxes on the counter, you're going, oh, Alpha-Bits. You know?
Right.
But it's done in a way where it's not like, hey, Alpha-Bits, look,
Right.
Isn't that cool? It's like they're just there, and either you notice them or you don't. So to me, it was real.
Even things like furniture, the types of furniture. There's trends where you wouldn't see that type of draperies or carpeting or chairs. And you look at
what a big one
deco. We had that in our house.
That octagonal mirror in their entryway.
Right.
That was so signature of what you're talking about.
Exactly. And then of course the vehicles. Everything has to be of that time period or earlier. And that actually had a lot with my appreciation as I would watch, you were watching the story and the characters and the plots and everything. But then when I as a filmmaker step back and go, wow, look at all these scenes and every single one of these cars driving through here. Every prop every phone booth for that matter, has to look like it did from the 80s. And I really give a lot of credit to the production design team for pulling that off because when we do movies or shows, our productions, there's production design involved, but we're just usually working in our current day. So most of the stuff that's here is just can apply. But every time you have to go, okay, what would the table look like? What kind of lampshade are they in? What's their clothes going to be? What's the hairstyle like? How about the glasses? Everything has to be from not now. It has to be from that time period. Yep. And that's a lot to think about for every little thing, from the tape recorders to the just the smallest of detail. The printers that they use to print out stuff, and these things, and a lot of these appliances, coffee machines, they have the coffee makers, they have to work. They actually are functioning. So I'm going, where do they find a working dot matrix printer from the 80s? Yep. So those little details I really loved about it, and sometimes I forget we're in the 80s because it's not in your face. They're not, like you said, pounding it and saying, hey guys, we're going to tell you that we're in the 80s right now, but it's there. And I never caught any things where I go, oh, wait a minute, that's not right. I'm sure they missed the things here too, but I never saw any. And that was a big part of what I respected how they did it because...
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because in the behind the scenes, one thing they talked about is the biggest part of their visual effects budget was always fixing the automobiles in the background. Because they said for many scenes, they could block off a street, but they can't control what cars you see further down. And of course, those cars would usually be modern cars. And so they did a lot of digital fixing to erase modern cars from backgrounds or even places on streets where they missed something. So there was a lot of visual effects going into fixing the automobiles. They said that was a big part of their budget.
I think as a general statement, when it comes to TV shows, when I think about how it used to be back in the 80s, you had TV quality shows and then you had movies, and the divide was huge, right?
Yeah.
You knew when something was a bad TV version of something, and then you had big budget movies. Now, because of technology and everything else that's changed in the industry, you have these TV shows are so good now, production quality wise, they look just as good as a feature film and sometimes better. And you get to spend more time. You get to spend years with characters and stories as opposed to having to cram it all in 2 hours, 2.5, 90 minutes. So the depth you can really get into these shows and characters is really powerful. But the fact that the production quality is so much better now that it is just on par with cinematic motion pictures.
That's a good point because back in the 80s, TV shows got really good at recycling things too. They were constantly recycling shots, sound effects, moments, and then in the terms of like Battlestar Galactica, which back then to make a sci-fi show was so expensive, the only way they could keep the show going is they decided, let's just let them find Earth. So they end up on Earth and you get Galactica 1980, which is not a lot of people have fond memories of, but boy, it got much more affordable for them. Again, recycle, find ways to save money. But the Americans, you never feel, like you said, at all like there's any effort to recycle anything.
And there's so, like you said, there's so many good TV shows that I have yet to see that I probably will see, but they're all now on a level that is just so good to watch, which I think is what makes the decision what to watch so hard now. There's too many good shows from Amazon Prime to Netflix, and then still the networks are putting out good stuff. you just have to choose because for me,
I know, and with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, it's a hard choice.
Down here, but for me, I'll explain to you because we talk about quality and watching it on high def and all that stuff. I'll be honest with you. For me to watch this show and to be able to get through it in a timely fashion where I knew it wasn't going to take me 3 years of my life to finally get through, I would spend a lot of my time watching this show in multitask mode, which is never ideal, I know, but sometimes I would just have the show on and I'm working on stuff, in my office right here, and I'll have the show playing. And obviously there's something really good visually, or there's those scenes where you can't do it all the time because half the time the show's in Russian.
That's
so
right.
You can't not watch what's going on. You gotta watch and read those subtitles. So it forces you to have to watch and drink.
Unless you know Russian.
Unless you know Russian, you can't just listen and fold your laundry. So, but I had to do that. And sometimes I watch it on my phone. Sometimes I watch it on this TV. Sometimes I watch it on the big screen. But most of the time, I did not watch it in the comfort of my big screen surround system. That was the rare exception. I mostly watched it in my office and, to be honest, a lot of times on my phone. And it was just because I needed to get through it. And you probably out there, folks, will need to do the same thing, because how often do we get the time where we can just sit there and devote 1 hour and just do that and still be able to get through everything else we want to get through in our day? I knew if I didn't, I'd have to do it over a long period of time. And I wanted to get through this quickly so that I could get through the show and then start watching something else, but also so that we could review this thing and not have to say, well, we will review that when I'm done with it in 2 years. So at the sacrifice of some quality that we spoke of, I had to do whatever it took to watch the show. And so,
but what I think is so funny is listening to you though, Norb, I have to say is that I find that here you are, you're talking about, I think people in general, everyone wants a high-def TV, right? Everybody wants a high-def TV. It's like you want to say, I have a high-def TV. Yeah, I got this cool 65-inch TV. Yeah, check it out. But then everybody is watching things on their phones, and they could care less if it's a Blu-ray or DVD release. No one's even paying attention. It's almost like high-def is just a fashion statement. Yep, I got the high-def TV. See, it completes my living room. I need that look of my living room to cover that if my living room photo was going to be in a magazine, it fits what a modern living room should look like. But as far as sitting and watching stuff, I'm just going to watch it on my phone. It's the only way I can do it.
Well, and you got to remember, for me, it's not a fashion statement for me. I definitely, there are times when that TV in the living room gets used. And usually whenever we watch family films together, we were watching it on the big screen and the full surround and all that stuff. But it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of, there's only so much time in the day, and it would not be possible for me to take over and watch it there in its full glory and full volume if I wanted to get through it in that many times. But if it's just one movie, and I want to make sure that one movie experience, like when we watched Aliens together, I wanted to make sure, we did finally watch it, I wanted to make sure it was big, loud, and we could all watch it together. And so that's the time when it gets its use. But there are other times like this when I need to get through 60 episodes or whatever there are. I have to do whatever works to get through the material, and that often involves watching it on a big screen that's this big instead of the one that's the 65, 75 inch or whatever the size is. So it's about choice. It's about being able to get through, and sometimes you got to make the sacrifices.
Well, I will say this. When I got back into the show, I watched it on the airplane on my small laptop, and that was fine. And as I continued, I will admit, I watched a couple on my PC screen while I was doing a little bit of work, but then quickly I realized this show is too good. I've got to watch this on the big TV and where I focus. So I made a transition to the high def TV because it was so good. I didn't want to not enjoy it at its full potential, like the filmmakers intended. And
how long did it take you to get through all the seasons?
To finish it? Oh, yeah. I finished it in probably 2-3 months. Over a 2-3 month period, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I did it faster.
Good for you.
But, you know, to each their own. But let's talk, we're talking about technicalities here, but we should talk about why we enjoy, you know, what makes this show so good that we keep boasting about. And so you spend a lot of time in this movie. Obviously, I set it up in the plot, but you've got this very fun dynamic of a family of four. The Elizabeth and Phillip are the married couple who have been KGB agents from the start. So their whole lives being here in America with their kids is all based on working for the KGB. They're all here under false pretenses, pretending to be an American family, but all they're here for is to raise their family here, to fool everybody so that they can get access to whoever they need to get access to, so they can inform the Soviet Union about what's going on in the United States. And then to make things fantastically tense, Stan Beam and played by Noah Emmerich, aka Byron, moves in across the street and becomes friends with Phillip, and now you're fraternizing with the enemy, but you're not only living next door to each other, but the main two guys are best buddies who share all kinds of family occasions. They play racquetball together and go through all kinds of life experiences. So the tension is delicious. And you know at some point during the show,
it is.
It's that timeline which is delicately going along side by side. At some point, you know it's going to come crashing down and the reality will all come in. And of course, that's what you have to stay tuned for. When and how will that happen? We'll talk about that later. But the fun part I think about that is, besides the cat and mouse game of the spies, every show has got different objectives, what they have to interrogate somebody for, who do they have to sleep with to get information from, who do they need to, sneak a microphone into, all kinds of cat and mouse spy games, which is fun because every show is a little bit different. But one thing that is consistent throughout the show is there's multiple disguises that they have to wear, because obviously they can't be seen and look like the same people that they're posing as. So Phillip and Elizabeth are constantly changing their looks throughout the entire series, and sometimes it's recurring looks if it's a character that they're maintaining, or it might just be this one look where they're wearing this big blonde hair, a big beard, or she's looking like a completely different person. And it's amazing how these disguises really do transform the characters, and they look like, it's amazing how you really can turn yourself into somebody else, and it's fun to watch them go through these disguises.
What's cool about this show is, I don't know if you remember the movie Fletch from the 80s, starring Chevy Chase, but that was all about him wearing disguises, and he's an undercover private investigator. And since Fletch, I don't think I've ever seen something that really followed along those lines of where you have to wear disguises. And that's one reason I think The Americans is so cool, is because of all the different disguises. It's like a fresh look for them constantly through the series that is fun to look forward to seeing what are they going to look like next. And I love that. Yeah, it definitely, there's some times when it's just surprisingly like, wow, she looks really different in that, or now she looks like an old grandma-ish mom now, and then she can transform and become this, really hot-looking woman with blonde and boots up to the knees, and the characters really do transform. I think I told you this in the beginning. When I first started watching this show, I was slightly put off trying to get into the characters, because the Phillip Jennings, the main protagonist, played by Matthew Rice, as we talked about, my first reaction was, he looks a lot like former Seahawks quarterback Matt Hasselbeck. And I don't know how many other people have made that comparison, but when I look at this part of his face right here, I could not get that out of my head. I kept thinking, Matt Hasselbeck, he looks just like Matt Hasselbeck, and nobody else, Cynthia didn't seem to notice that, but I couldn't get out of my head for the longest time. Finally, I just got over that, and I could just enjoy the character. But that's what hit me first. I already knew Keri Russell from seeing her in different shows. She did that one where she was a judging Amy. Actually, I can't remember what the show was. But Felicity.
Felicity. Okay, whatever.
Well, I'm laughing because you said, I remember Keri Russell from seeing her in different shows, and I thought, you never watched Felicity.
I thought she was one where she was a judge.
Oh boy, I don't know that.
I think she was.
To me, she went from Felicity to being in all of J.J. Abrams' movies as a little guest star, cameo or small little part. She was in his Mission Impossible movie. Then she was in the last Star Wars movie. She's like one of his, I'm always going to get a little spot for you in my production. People.
Yeah. Felicity, I don't know, I thought she was some kind of judge thing, but oh well, maybe not. But she's good in this, and she's...
Yeah, she was in Judge Dredd, Norb.
That's not the show I'm thinking of.
I
must be mistaken of something else.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of something else.
I'm going to figure that one out. But while we're still talking about it, I think the cast is great because she has a versatile look to her because she can play, because of all the disguises, she can play the older look. Obviously, it's easier to make someone look older, but she's still attractive and sexy enough that she can play the seductive character who needs to be that, because in the show there's a lot of times she uses that to try to get in close with different male counterparts and people who are the targets of a particular spy operation. And so she has to be convincing, and because if she's not attractive to us, it's not going to be believable that some guy on the screen is going to be attracted to her. So she uses that quite a bit, uses a lot of sexuality to lure
even Matthew
guys
Rhys uses it
and
too.
He does it too. But I don't look at him, I'm a dude, but I don't look at him and go, oh, he's a good looking hunk I'd fall for. I never thought of him as that, but he somehow in the movie, he's portrayed as a guy who can somehow, is a ladies' man. It's not like Brad Pitt where you just look at him and right away you're just like, oh, this guy's gorgeous and has all the beautiful features. This guy, he's very average looking, I think.
I think in his case, it's his personality. He's got a way with words. He's funny, and women look for those qualities in a man, and I think attraction is part of it. But we know that men and women look at each other for levels of attractiveness differently. Right. And in Matthew Rhys, his strength is his personality.
Yeah. So, because I think the biggest test in this one is that there are times when he has to really bond and make a connection with some younger characters.
Yes.
And no matter how you disguise them, you can't young up a guy to a point from where his age is. So he has to still play the older guy, but still come across as sexually attractive, as cool. And he has a couple of moments like that where they do pull it off. So, but this, I think, so you kind of get the sense of what the tension is created. You're constantly seeing the Russian spy side. You've got the KGB office that's constantly telling them what they need to be doing, and then sometimes they don't always agree with each other. So there's a tension of just on the whole Soviet side. And then you've got
their handlers.
You've got the handlers who work with them and tell them and give them their orders. And then on the flip side, you've got the FBI side where you get the inside because you're in with Stan, the neighbor, and other characters who rotate through. And so you see both sides. So you see them trying to find out who's behind this. You see the Russian spies, Phillip and Elizabeth, trying to not be caught and constantly seeing both sides. So you're kind of rooting for both sides sometimes because you like Stan, you like the FBI, but you don't want our family to get caught because even though they're the Russians and the bad guys in the world if you're an American, but in this show, you want them to make it because you like them. And
there's really no good guy in this show. Everybody's got their secrets and the things they did that they shouldn't have done and maybe aren't proud of. And I always think that's what makes for great characters these days, whether it's in TV or movies, is every character has to have flaws. Nobody's perfect. There's no good guy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there's a lot of, like I said earlier, you're not going to want to watch this with young kids. Pretty graphic scenes, a couple of them really disturbing. And there are some very sexual scenes that sometimes you see more in TV than you do in movies these days. And, often some of them get pretty violent too. So it's definitely one that you got to know that that's going to be part of this. If you like that sort of thing and it doesn't bother you, this show.
Which is why I kept telling you should watch this, because I know you like that sort of thing.
What are you trying to say about me?
I'm just saying what you've already said on the show many times yourself.
No, but it's like Game of Thrones, right? If you've seen Game of Thrones, there's nothing that's in Game of Thrones that you wouldn't be able to see, vice versa. But the characters are great. And then to add to the whole mix, you've got their kids. You got a teenage daughter and then a son who's a couple years younger than her. And a lot of times early on, they're not much of a factor. But they definitely, as they get older, it plays more into, which naturally, as your kids would grow older and understand more what's going on in your world.
What was a relief in this show is when the kids grew up, the actors who played the kids delivered, I felt. And I'm making a comparison to The Walking Dead. Because the kid character in The Walking Dead, I can't remember his... Carl. The older Carl, the actor who plays Carl, the older he got, the less I liked the character. He just couldn't bring it to the table when it came to acting, I felt, and I think many people felt that way because they eventually killed him off.
I never liked Carl, even when he was younger, and he became more annoying as he got older. Yeah, I was not sad when he died. It's like, yes! Yep. Goodbye, Carl.
But you know what I mean, is that these kids, as they grew up, they had more prominent roles in the show, and they were good.
Yeah, and it definitely added another layer of tension to where ultimately the story continues to evolve into. So yeah, so that added just another layer on it in terms of multiple areas of tension, because these shows are all about tension, creating sources of conflict. So you've got conflict between Phillip and Elizabeth just in running their lives, and they have this front that is a travel agency that they run. That's their real operation. Then they're also spies underneath that, and then they got to still raise their kids, and the kids don't know about what's going on, so they got to keep them out of the loop whilst running this secret life and while they're wondering what their parents are doing in the middle of the night. And then you got their neighbor who's hanging out with them. And so you got that tension. And then the tension within each organization of what the agents are doing and what the organizations want. And then you've got the maintained relationships where they're living double lives, having relationships with people on an ongoing basis. I'm thinking, how do you pull that off? Of course, it's a lot easier, I think, and it creates other fun challenges where, because there's no cell phones, you don't have that constant communication of where you can just check up on somebody. In the 80s, it's like if you want to call somebody, you got to pull over, get into a phone booth and put that 25 cents in and make a phone call. And that adds to a lot of the reasons why things become tense, because they can't communicate. The only thing they might have is a walkie-talkie, and that's something that was used a lot and back in the 80s. But it's not something you have all the time, and you can't be certainly secretive with it when you pull this thing out. So there are a lot of times when it's just trying to tell somebody, something went wrong. We got to tell them about it, but how are we going to let them know? Oh my gosh. So they have to use a lot more sophisticated communication methods with secret signals and notes left places. It just adds to the fun of anytime you get to be creative with the whole spy.
Well, and through the storyline, Phillip eventually has to start using computers and understanding how to work with computers as part of their espionage and their efforts to find secure information. And so we as an audience are going along with them as they are learning how to deal with this new thing called computers that happened in the 80s.
And it's fun because not only are the computers evolving, but we get to see the evolution of video games. And in television, as you'd mentioned before, I hadn't even gotten to that point. You'd mentioned that the Intellivision, as we did a game review about the 80s, my Intellivision console makes a cameo a couple of times and is actually kind of a key piece at one point in the show. So I was very proud to see that. I was not happy with the game selection. They used Astro Smash. Not a game I exactly considered one of the top 10, but it was fitting given the
my only critique is
nuclear.
During a lot of shots when one of the kids in the background's playing, they always do this. They got the joystick and they feel like they have to constantly be joysticking much more than you do in real life. And I know that's an actor. They say, well, what should I be doing? Well, just pretend you're playing the game. So it's check, but it's too much.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And it's kind of like sometimes when we are doing a video and a person's just supposed to be listening. Okay, so just act like you're listening, and then people have this feeling they have to over-listen. They do a lot of nodding. In reality, a lot of times it's just this.
Yep.
And that's actually better, more realistic instead of the, oh, they want me to pay attention. Okay, what would I do? I would do doing this. So that's the same thing with the joystick. I have a control. I better work it.
That's true. Next time you're talking in the show, Norb, I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah, I don't think I've nodded at you once this whole show. I'm just maybe mostly like, no. So I think so far we've been pretty spoiler free. We just talked in generalities, but so you kind of get an idea of the shows. But I think this would be a good point to maybe make that transition to, if you are listening now and you plan to watch the show and you don't want to be spoiled by what we might have to say about where the show goes, this would be a good time to stop listening, because I'd love to talk a little bit more specific about some seasons, some episodes, and really how the show came to a finale. So
press pause now.
Yeah, press pause, yes. For those you want to continue listening because you don't care or because you've already watched the show, well, now we can get into the nitty gritty about a little bit more detail about where this show started to go. So we didn't plan this out. We just did decide we were going to do this as a part 1, no spoilers, and a part 2 spoilers. Outside of that, we not planned, as with all of our shows, we don't plan out what we're going to talk about. So it's very raw, very spontaneous. So I don't know how you want to start this, Mike.
Well, I was wondering what you thought about the fact at the end that everybody died. I mean, everybody. What an ending.
Yeah. And once they hit that nuclear war button, like, wait a minute, that didn't happen. No, then. All right, I guess we're fast forwarding to the ending.
No, we don't need to fast forward to the ending. That was just
okay.
a joke.
All right, you're just joking. Well, I'll start it by saying there was a point at which you know whenever you watch a show for multiple seasons, you start to kind of analyze how one season compares to the next. Did I like season 1 versus 2, 3? Yeah. And did it just stay consistent, or was there a point where you kind of felt like it wasn't as good as the other one? Well, I started to feel that I felt like there's 6 seasons. I think for me, the biggest probably lulling point, and I don't know if you'd agree with me, I think it was season 5.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I see this pattern over and over is most shows, it's around season 3 where they really take off. And everybody's hitting their stride. The budgets are increasing. I think the studio pressure is less on the filmmakers than it was. They know they've got a hit going. Because they've got a hit on their hands. They've got a fan base. They know the characters better. The writers know the characters. The actors know the characters. Everybody's just in sync. And yeah, so season 5, I think season 5 was clearly, you described this in Breaking Bad, but I think they were preparing to end at the end of season 5 if they didn't get that season 6 renewal. And they did. So they did one more season. But season 5, I felt like was spiraling towards a potential ending. Which maybe that might be why you look at season 5 as kind of because they really, I don't remember it as well as you, but they were really, again, kind of coming at odds with each other on things at that point and not getting along. Isn't that right?
I mean, it was definitely starting to show things unraveling. But I think for more, it didn't feel like it was setting up the ending. I think it's just what I felt like what I didn't like as much. This was the season where I think Phillip had his relationship with a character named Martha. And that was a good section because he maintains this relationship with her. She works for the FBI. So he's basically fooled her into believing that even to a point where they got married, technically, but it was always had to be on the down low, and she knew this. So she was doing his dirty work willingly, not knowing he was an agent. She thought he was like another government area, and she was just trying to help him out.
Well, season 5 is where that all came to a head.
That's where it ended. Correctly. And it ended early. So she basically, the whole thing falls apart. He tells her, you have to leave the country. You need to go to Russia, because if you get caught, you're going to be prosecuted and go to jail. So she gets on a plane and essentially flies off to Russia, never see her again. And when she left, I felt a certain tension got lost. We didn't have any more. There was another maintained relationship. There was Stan, who was the FBI agent. He has a relationship with Nina, who was, I think, one of the spicier relationships in the whole thing. She's very attractive, but she's kind of playing the double agent against him. But she also gets out of the picture. We still see her recur, but she's now in the Soviet Union, so she doesn't have that same presence in the show. So once those two, relationships were no longer in the show, I felt a certain, we're just missing. It's not tense enough for me. There's still good stuff happening, but it didn't have the same level of tension that the rest of the other seasons.
I'll add to what I agree with you, and what I will add to, I think, contributed to that too, is the loss of, I don't remember the actor's name, but he was John Boy from the Waltons, but he played the head of the FBI office. He was a great character because he always had a clever way of saying things. And when they killed him off, the guy who replaced him was boring. There was nothing interesting about him. And I believe that was around season 5 as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that added
4,
to it
maybe
too.
later 4, but 5 for sure.
Yeah.
And that was another one too. And the guy who replaced him really had not much of a role. They didn't bother to build him up. And I don't know why they decided to get rid of John Boy then. He definitely was a big part of that added tension.
He was interesting.
Everything going on. Yeah, he was interesting. It's funny, when I finally realized it was John Boy, it just sort of hit me. I didn't catch it right away. It took me a few episodes to finally go, oh my gosh. Now I know why this guy feels familiar. It's John Boy. Also from Battle Beyond the Stars, if you recall.
Well, I have to ask you about another season 5 thing that's Cynthia, because Cynthia has watched Ozark like you. And there's a character, I guess, in Ozark that is in The Americans who plays the teen girl. And Cynthia was telling me, boy, when you see this girl in the Ozark, you realize she was playing one heck of a different type of character in The Americans.
Very different.
So how was that for you, seeing this familiar face?
Well, I kind of knew it was coming because you told me before I got to that point that she was.
Yeah, but you didn't know what she was going to be like.
I didn't know what she was going to be like, but again, in my mind, I'm waiting. I'm thinking, okay, when's she coming? When's she coming? And when she pops in, boom, there she is. Because she looks exactly the same. Her hair's the blonde, tight curls, pretty much the same age. But what's different is in Ozark, she has a very strong Southern accent. She's a very feisty, woman. And this one, she had no accent at all, which was a trip. It's like, whoa, she's okay. That's obviously not a real accent. And she is not quite the feisty, strong, spitfire, firecracker character. She's a little more low key, but
she's more of a depressed teenager.
Yeah, a little more rebellious against the parents because she has a relationship with Phillip. Again, this is what I talked about earlier about he has to lure a girl who looks like she's in her teens or early 20s into falling in love with him. And he does. And, it's not as developed as some of the other relationships. But he plants a microphone in her father's briefcase, and so some really good tension moments where they made a great mechanism to keep this relationship going, which was he had to maintain the relationship with her because he had to go sneak into the dad's briefcase to get the recorder and get the information off of that. So it forced him to have to keep going back there so that he could sneak in, get the recorder, take the tape out or whatever, take out the battery, whatever it is, and put it back in there. So it forced him to make the relationship continue on. And even though he didn't want to do it, he had to keep going in there. And there were some close calls where you thought he was going to get caught by either the parents coming home or the girl catching him in the act. And that made for some great tension as well. She was good. She's not quite she is such a great character in Ozark and such a dominant part of that cast. This one's a little more, not as prominent of a role, and it kind of goes away from it, and then it kind of goes back into it, and then it ends. So it didn't have quite the I like the relationship with Martha, which really goes to a full head where it just keeps building. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then it just finally goes, you got to get out of here or you're going to face the worst of situations.
Well, the other thing that sucked about season 5 too is Oleg, who is a character I really warmed to through the season.
Yeah.
Season 5 is where he went back to Russia and we didn't see much of him, and that kind of sucked too. So season 5,
once your favorite characters are sent to another country, it's kind of hard to really get into them because they're living this other life. And and the Oleg story, once he left, I just almost tuned him out. I was like, why do I care about what he's doing over there? It's really got no strong effect. You're just worried at some point he's going to get caught and they're going to punish him for.
So I have to ask you, when he's over in Russia and he's infiltrating grocery stores who are, funneling illegal produce, so to speak. Did you catch the little moment where Martha was in the grocery store?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
That was,
right away. It's like, oh my God, there she is.
There she
I
is.
caught her. Yep, that was cool. But to be honest, that whole thing with the grocery store stuff, this is where I was going, I'm not feeling this very much. They're trying to build up this whole storyline in season 5 with this. The whole thing is about that the United States was supposedly trying to create like a tainted wheat supply to basically cause famine in Soviet Union by sending this, these bad crops over there and bugs that would create these bad crops. And it turns out to not be the case. But the whole
poor guy got his back broken over the whole deal. And
the lab guy got caught. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of why, because they spent so much time focusing on that whole food thing. And it wasn't as rewarding of a storyline. I felt like I'm just not really feeling this, guys. This is a lot of time spent on this, and it didn't really go that far. It turned out to be not what they thought it was. So it didn't have the same oomph as some of the previous, relationships. And a lot of it is because some of these characters either got killed off or they were sent off. And Martha goes to Russia. Oleg goes to Russia. Nina went to Russia. Once they all got sent to Russia, they became less interesting. Yeah. And so once they got rid of those, it definitely felt a lack. And then what they started to do to make up for it is they started then building up the tension with the daughter. That's when the daughter now started having a more. She went Pastor from really the Pastor Tim thing, and that started to build in season 4 and season 5. But for a long time, the kids were basically ornamental things. You barely spent any time in the first 3 seasons. They were just kind of there. And then they started to have the daughter asking a lot of questions and starting to suspect something. And then she goes full on in where they have to tell her the truth because she starts going to this church and gets close to the minister there and a Pastor Tim. And because of that, she starts telling things about their family, and he's asking questions to a point where you're thinking, oh man, he's going to rat them out and find out what's going on. But they've delicately continued to handle that balance between keeping secrets and telling the daughter enough to pacify her what she's thinking until they can have enough time to finally really convince her of what who they truly are.
Well, one of the best moments, I think, of tension and humor at the same time is when they have Stan. They're having Stan over for dinner, and Pastor Tim shows up, and they say, "Oh, join us." And Pastor Tim says to Stan, "So what do you do?" He says, "I'm an FBI agent." And Pastor Tim is just like looking at one to the other going, "You're an FBI? They're spies? Oh my." And it's like this realization, and you're all friends? I mean, that was just an awesome moment.
Yeah, talk about
what's he going to do?
There's great moments in any movie, film, or TV when you feel like, I do not want to be here right now because this feels so awkward. How are we going to get through this? Those were definitely one of those times where you're just thinking someone's going to say the wrong thing and it's just going to create all this havoc. And, by that time, they'd built up so much good chemistry with these different characters. And I really enjoyed the Stan-Phillip relationship.
I did too.
As guys.
Do you like Est? How they go to Est?
Yeah, they go to Est. Est is this sort of self-help seminar where they go in to confront your past and your issues to find out what's troubling you now as a root of what you went through as a child. And so Phillip really starts to go through this as the show starts to reach to the end. Phillip really starts to go into this mode of self-realization and starts to really question about what he's doing more than Elizabeth's role. She's kind of diehard. I'm KGB all the way, all Russia, and Phillip's been a little bit more on the slightly. He goes and buys a Trans Am at one point, and he gets into debate with her, like, "Don't you want to enjoy some things a little bit?" And she's like, "No, that's not what we're here for. That's not what this country."
They're the enemy. Everyone here's the enemy.
Yeah, and yet Phillip takes a few liberties to enjoy life a little bit more. So he starts to really.
You could really sense though with Elizabeth, she really liked that friendship with, I think it was the Vietnamese lady.
Yeah, the Mary Kay,
and that really affected her when she had to end that relationship. You could say, and she wasn't being honest with Phillip about, because Phillip was saying, don't you feel anything about being here? And she did, but she was lying to him, saying, "No, I don't."
Yeah,
but that was really hard for her when. That was an interesting little. Kind of. So
I really enjoyed that. I think it was obviously you and I can't connect with being a KGB spy or an FBI agent, but we can connect to two guys who have kids and wives and the challenges of balancing all that. There are times when Stan actually gets divorced or separated from his wife. At one point, Phillip actually separates from Elizabeth, and yet they still have their kids to contend with. So you have this whole conflict of mom versus dad, the kids siding with one versus the other, and just the tensions of juggling multiple things. None of us are spies, but we still have our work to juggle. We have children to juggle, how to get them to and from places. And so all that added to the level of why I enjoy the show, because you can really relate to the characters. And then the relationship with Stan and Phillip, it's like two guys who've become really good buddies.
Yeah, two buddies.
And the tortured part about it is this one of them who really likes the other. He truly does regard him as a friend, has this deep, dark secret, which at its root destroys the entire relationship. So how would you as a human being be able to weigh that to where, like, it would be like you and I being friends, but in the core of things, I'm hiding this deep, dark secret that if you ever found out, it would completely destroy everything that we have. How would you live with that without that stress eating you up?
I already know your deep, dark secret. I know you're really a Patriots fan.
No. I'd be more likely to be a Russian spy before I become a Patriots fan. But you know what I mean? I think that's what's fun about it is, and you can feel the tension that builds, and ultimately what kind of dooms them in is because they start to question their beliefs and question the orders that are given to them. And once that starts to happen and you're no longer totally full allegiance to your country and the mission, well, things aren't going to work out very well. And that's the great attention to what leads to the finale, is because things start to just really unravel. And
so I have to share with you one funny behind the scenes thing and see how this hits you, because I figure you probably don't know this, but during season 6, when Phillip and Elizabeth really separate, Phillip decides to run the travel agency. He's getting out of the biz of the spying biz. Later. So he runs the travel agency, and Elizabeth continues to spy alone, without her partner. But there's a part where Phillip is line dancing in like a Texas style bar,
country bar,
and they're doing this
clapping,
clap, and he's smiling, and all his coworkers are there, and they're having a great time. And of course, that is the contrast between Elizabeth, who's out still working, still trying to fight for Mother Russia. But Matthew Rhys said of all the things he had to do, that was the thing he hated the most. He hated line dancing. It was embarrassing to him, and he threw away the shoes he had to wear as soon as they were done shooting the scene.
That's
and
pretty
that
funny.
was kind of sad to me, because he really looked like he was having fun.
Actor.
As an actor, he totally pulled it off. But I was wondering what you thought of that little moment of the line dancing stuff.
Well, it was funny because line dancing is not such an alien thing to me. My parents line dance all the time. They've been teaching line dances up till now because of the whole quarantine thing. But so line dancing in my family is a pretty normal thing. So if there was a Filipino function, you know there will be line dancing. There will be line dancing. Period. There's no question. Will there be? It will happen. So the only difference is you don't have cowboy. The only difference is you don't have cowboy boots and cowboy hats. Instead, you have
and probably no electric
dress
slide
shoes and
either.
barong Tagalogs. Oh no, there'll be electric slide.
Oh, okay.
Electric slide. Oh yeah, for sure. The electric slide will be in there, but they'll have a bunch of other ones that most people don't know about. But they're all very cool. But it's just funny. You'll see a bunch of older senior citizen Filipinos all dancing together in a line. It's a very common thing.
But that was an ultimate moment in the show to show Phillip truly embracing America and having fun. And that was a fun little part. I enjoyed the line dancing stuff. And it was a bummer to hear how much the actor hated doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cute because it's so opposite of everything that would be what he would stand for from the beginning with his character to now he's wearing cowboy boots and hat and in a country bar line dancing. It definitely is a stark contrast to where he had started off the journey. But yeah, so it was funny. It was definitely wow, these guys are in totally different places now from where where the trajectory had sent them.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about the ending at some point as the last point, but I'm trying to think if there's any other things you wanted to talk about scenes-wise that were...
Well, the one thing I would add is there was a plot line, I think it was season 4 that maybe trickled into season 5 about a bioterrorism where they're stealing bioterrorism type viruses that they think the Americans are developing bioweapons. And so as undercover agents, their job is they have to infiltrate one of these virus companies that holds these lethal viruses and steal it so they can send it back to Russia to analyze it. And during the process, their handler gets infected and he's near death and they have to quarantine themselves. And it was a little eerie watching all that in the middle of this coronavirus scare that we've been going through, and seeing how back then what they were doing to protect themselves, and knowing at the time they made this, it was just all an idea. It wasn't something where you actually had to worry about being contaminated or infected. And But that's why it made it eerie watching.
Yeah, it was like, wow, this is happening now, and yet they're very accurate to what we're kind of going through. But there was just these two people who are, the 3 people who are all exposed to it and all the things they had to do, from checking their thermometer, their fevers, and looking for symptoms, and how they can't leave, and they have to sanitize everything, and they can't talk to anybody. So yeah, it was like, wow, this feels right now. And this was shot probably like 5 years ago. So that was pretty cool to see that. And it was definitely one of the more tense moments in the story. I think that was felt like season 4 when that one happened. But that was, like you said, season 3 and 4 when things really ramped up, and you feel like the show is on its stride. Like 3 probably was at the peak of all that. Yeah. I'll tell you so every show has shocking moments, like, oh my gosh, right? Everybody talks about the water cooler when did you watch the episode last night? Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. This is actually after the Nina character, who she had the relationship with Stan, the FBI agent, and he really was in love with her. And you thought that he was ultimately going to betray his country and sell out. That was the ultimate goal of Nina, was to convince the KGB, give her another chance, to get Stan to basically give in, give some major secret up. And it was about the Star Wars defense system. I think it was something related to that. And it was the computer thing. It was something related to the computer. There was some computer thing that they were trying to get the technology of, and he didn't do it. So she ends up getting sent back to Russia, put into a prison, and then she's still trying to earn her way out of there. And you almost think, and because she had a relationship with Stan and Oleg, the Russian guy, also another spy at the KGB. So you have 2 guys who are, these 2 agents who are actually illegally against their country's backs talking because they both want to save her. But she's in a prison in the Soviet Union. And in the end, she finally does some things that she thinks she's earning favors with, and she's going to finally get released. And she has these dreams of reuniting with one or 2 or both of them at some point. And instead, when she gets called out and says, out of her cell to go see the big boss at the prison, they find her guilty of the crime and blow her brains out right there on the spot. That was like, oh my gosh, I did not see that one coming. That was pretty shocking. It was sad too, because I liked her. I didn't like when she left America and was no longer in the relationship with Stan and Oleg and U.S. soil. But they kept her around, thought she might, make a reappearance back on American soil, but no, they blew her brains out, and that was probably the biggest shock. There's 2 good shocks. That's one of the major shocks in the movie.
Let me comment on that scene. I think when they said you're guilty, sentenced death, you still think, well, maybe there's a chance, and her whole body sags out of just shock that she can't believe she's been sentenced to die after everything she's gone through. And the minute she sags, the person behind her lifts the gun up and shoots her in the head, and then they just let her body fall to the floor. And what I read is that the writers had researched in Russian prisons at the time, that was their procedure, is that they would tell someone they were going to be put to death, and they knew that their body would sag And it was all part of the plan because by their body sagging, it was easier to get the gun to their head and they could just shoot them and let their body continue to fall to the floor. That was all realistically what Russians did to their own in prison. And so they recreated that based on true accounts of history. Really sad. Really sad.
I can see that because then if they're freaking out and panicking, it'd be harder to shoot. But I didn't realize they would just kill them right there on the spot. You'd think they'd go through some kind of process and have an execution chamber or whatever. They didn't waste any time. So I guess in some ways it's better for the person. They don't have to sit there in death row for several months. But the fact
that they knew that their body would sag, they always had two military people next to them holding them, ready for them to just let their body sag. That's all just sickly, sadly planned out. Just knowing how people's brains work. They just played that into their favor.
It was definitely disturbing. It's even more disturbing knowing that that's kind of a standard operating procedure.
Yep.
The other twist moment that was probably the big shocker. I don't remember what season that was. I want to say it was 3 or 4. But when there was a part of the story where Phillip and Elizabeth become friends with this other family of KGB spies, and they spend a good early part of the season kind of establishing this bond, but they get killed pretty early on, and you think it's because of somebody in
some mysterious
KGB,
killer.
Mysterious. Don't know if it's American, don't know if it's Russian, but somebody killed this other KGB wife and husband who were also spies, and you spend the whole season. Everybody's using it as leverage as to the Russians are pissed off at the Americans thinking that they did it, and the Americans, are trying to figure out who's responsible. The whole time you're trying to figure out who's this bad guy, who's the bad guy who left, and the daughter got killed too. So the son is left by himself. And so who was the brutal killer who left the son to be an orphan throughout this whole episode? Whose season? So the whole season plays out. Finally, you're going to find out everything's one of the more intense finales to a season. There's a big cat and mouse game. The FBI is pretty sure they're going to get them. It looks like that Elizabeth's going to walk into a trap. I mean, everything's coming down to this. Oh my gosh, it's all going to come to an end right here. And they managed to escape out of that. But then the big reveal was when we do find out who actually did kill the husband and wife, and it turns out to be the son. And I was like, oh, mind blown. And he's the one who did it because he actually had a whole different view on the entire thing and what they were doing. So that was probably the other big shocker, maybe the biggest shocker. That one first, and then the Nina blowing away was probably number 2. So 2 great moments that, if you're listening to this and you hadn't watched the show yet, well, we just ruined it for you because that's one of the best played out from the start of the season pretty much to the end. You're just wondering the whole time, who did this? Who's responsible for this terrible murder? And then it's the person you least suspect. So that was pretty cool. That was a mind-blowing finale. I could see how if you were watching this on the TV show and got to that and then to go, oh, now I gotta wait till next season. I have to wait several months. It was great to be able to go, okay, click season 5 now or season 4 next, So
well, the other pattern, I don't know if you noticed it, but they would always start off the season with a montage to an 80s song, and it was usually an 80s song you didn't know very well. Like I recognized Peter Gabriel in one of the songs. I remember thinking, this is not like Sledgehammer or familiar.
Yeah, exactly.
This is some Peter Gabriel song I've never heard, but it was cool. It was different, but it was 80s, but it wasn't your typical 80s. That's just it. It was more real 80s, that stuff people were listening to, but it wasn't on the radio.
Not the top 40, top 10. Yeah.
I like that a lot.
More popular ones, but that one definitely was a less popular Peter Gabriel song that really worked well. I can't remember what the song was now, but it was. I remember. I took note of all the montages. There were many in the show. That one really stood out. Like, wow, this is a really good song. It's really working right now, and it's a Peter Gabriel song I'm not that familiar with. So kudos to you guys for choosing that one. But I don't remember what season. I can't remember what was even going on. But I remember there's a lot of montages. Some with more popular songs. Others that worked better than others. So that was one of the best ones in the show.
Popular, but not what you would typically hear in a movie meant to shove the 80s down your throat.
Right.
I think well thought out 80s songs that worked but were not your typical. And I like that a lot. I kudos to the music supervisor, whoever came up with the decisions. I like that a lot.
Because, if you were to do, if someone said, put a Peter Gabriel song for montage, you immediately would think Sledgehammer or In Your Eyes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the ones that just jump out that, everybody will, I'll sing along to this. But that one was not. That was definitely.
But see, if they'd have used Sledgehammer in Your Eyes, I think I wouldn't have liked it. It would have.
No, that's what, exactly. The song actually lyrically, I don't remember what the song was. It just worked. It worked in the moment of watching that. And I was thinking, that's good. They went with something less cliche for that particular singer and that particular moment in the show.
So getting to the ending. I will talk about what I thought was going to happen because it was kind of funny in itself, and then you can, as you talk about how it hits you. But as we're barreling down to the ending, I mean, Cynthia and I are constantly talking about, we know it's coming to an end, and inside I'm sad because I love the show so much. I didn't want it to end. I would have loved it to keep going, but I knew the end was coming. So I'm making my own internal predictions of how it's going to end. And my prediction was, after a lot of thought, is I predicted that there was going to be a big shootout because I thought, okay, there's going to be a confrontation. There's going to be a shootout with Stan and Elizabeth and Phillip. And I figured that because Phillip really wanted out for a long time and Elizabeth was going to do whatever it took for Mother Russia, that she would sacrifice herself and take a bullet for Phillip. Somehow it would happen. Stan would shoot and she'd jump in the way, take the bullet and die, and Phillip would escape. And I figured he would be able to escape back to Russia, but he would be alone because his wife is dead. But then he'd re-hook up with Martha, and they gave a hint that Martha was going to adopt a little Russian girl, and she always wanted a child. That was a big part of earlier in her relationship with Phillip. Is she talked about wanting to adopt, and Phillip was like, ugh, but he went along with it. So Martha gets her adopted daughter. Phillip hooks up with Martha. They are together. They have a daughter. There's a new family. And I thought that'd be a fitting end for Phillip. And it was nowhere near that. Not even close. So,
yeah.
What did you think?
I didn't venture. I think a lot of times with these shows, I don't try to venture into thinking about what's going to happen because I feel like I'm setting myself up for false expectations. I do sometimes just blindly let myself enjoy things and not overanalyze. It's why sometimes I don't like to watch movies with my wife, Jen, because she's constantly trying to figure out what's going on way early. And sometimes she'll be right. She'll say, I think he's the bad guy. And then it's like, I'm thinking, I was like, huh. And then it turns out, I was like, oh, doggone it. Now I felt the whole time I saw it coming. But
yeah, but you pride yourself when we go to movies. You love to talk about, hey, I pegged it. We sometimes will talk, I think he's the bad guy.
In obvious movies where it's a whodunit type of movie where you're trying to figure out, okay, who's the bad guy? In this case, it wasn't about trying to figure out, it was just trying to see where was the show going to go, because you knew ultimately it was going to come down to Stan and Phillip having an awareness moment and what's going to happen. What's the big conflict when all the cards are on the table and it's like, oh my gosh, Stan finds out who Phillip really is and Phillip finally has to tell him the truth and what's going to happen at that explosive moment. So it's coming. So we all kind of know it will happen. I just never went to the step of thinking, okay, when it happens, it's going to go like this. And then I just never thought that far ahead. I just went along with the ride. But I just expected there was going to be much more violence. I thought it would be more of a shootout. So the actual finale takes place in a garage. Stan knows, he's already suspecting them. So he's been kind of already looking into them, spying on them, breaks into their house one time to see what's in there, to find something. He never really finds anything concrete, but he starts to just put his hunches together. And he, on a whim, he kind of stakes them out and finally does catch the two of them and their daughter trying to sneak away. And he confronts them in a parking garage. And at that point, he pulls the gun out and tells them, on the floor, and then they just start having the talk. Yeah. And, Phillip starts talking about his friendship, how he really was friends with him and all these things. And then what happens is not a single bullet is fired. He actually just lets them go. And I think it was probably Stan thinking about convinced at that point that he knew he had been played, but he generally felt like him and Phillip really did have a true friendship, and he was just doing his job. But
well, and what I wanted to say to Stan at that point is, Stan, how can you call him all this stuff when you yourself have broken rules and violated the trust of your own organization by what you were doing with Nina? So I was, I thought no one's going to call him on that because no one knows.
Well, and I think the difference, though, is that he was playing his own game because he, as an FBI agent, he's doing his own spying on people. But with Phillip, it was true. He had his guard down, and so he truly trusted and believed Phillip to be a friend. So when you, as a person, find out you yourself were betrayed by somebody, it's the ultimate low. And so he's facing as the ultimate low, and he's seen it coming. He already had suspected it. But then it finally hits the reality, and they're right there to see it all happen. I was trying to just to figure, I didn't try to think who's going to get shot or who's going to die and live, but I thought there would be gunfire. I thought there would be bloodshed. It would be much more of a, remember the Alamo kind of moment where they're up in some place and they have to make some kind of Houdini-like escape to get out of there, because I've done that so many times where you think they're in a corner, there's no way out. How are they going to get out of this mess? And somehow they find a way to sneak out of it. In this case, they didn't have to sneak out of it. They literally just talked him out of it and drove off. And
well, speaking of that, it was really interesting. Remember when Phillip meets with the Russian priest and figures out, oh no, they're watching.
Oh, they're onto him. Yeah.
And he starts walking away, and it's the first time you really see him panicked.
But
he starts running. It's like, you just never see that. And yet he still had a plan.
He just started chasing after him. Yeah, he still had a plan to get away. But yeah, usually everything's kind of calm, cool, collected. There's no freaking out. Yeah, he freaked out for the first time there. But that was before that moment. That was one of the many cases of dodging the bullet. But pretty much at that point, the writing was on the wall. They knew they had to get out of there. And that led to that scene where he had to face Stan, and Stan was the only one who really knew what was going on. But yeah, he let him go. And so that was surprise number one. And then the second part was, okay, they got away from Stan and most of the agents, and now it's just a matter of them getting out of the country. They know they can't stay here anymore. So Phillip and Paige and Elizabeth are in the car, and the last thing they got to figure out is their son. Their son is away at this college, right? I think he's at that boarding school. No, it's college, I think. No. He's at that boarding school.
Boarding school.
The boarding school, which is away some number of hours drive away. And so they're debating, Paige wants to go tell him or go get him. And they say, no, we can't get him. They'll be looking for us there. We have to just leave. Like, you can't just leave him. What's he going to do? And so I think they do call, but they don't call to tell him what's up. They just call to say goodbye in a very sort of non-panicked way. And it's a tough scene to watch. You're trying to imagine, how would I feel if I had to call my kid and say goodbye without telling them I'm saying goodbye and I'm never going to see you again. I mean, that was a tough moment to imagine, to think how you can't even be honest with them and say, I will never see you again, goodbye. But you're more like, okay, well, just wanted to talk to you real quick. And he's on the phone, I got to go, I got this thing to do.
Go.
Like, I'm never going to talk to you again. You don't even know it. And so the weight of that is pretty heavy. But then just when you think, okay, they just need to get across the border, get on the plane or train, whatever, to get into Canada, and eventually they'll be safe. They get on that train, and a couple last minute tension things where you got the immigration people checking tickets, on the thing, looking, and they have the wanted posters on their clipboard, and they're looking at everybody, and of course they got their disguises so they don't figure it out. And just when you think, okay, they're going to get away and the son will just have to survive on his own, the last final twist is the train leaves the platform heading to cross into Canada, and they look onto the platform, and there's Paige. She's left the train and she's standing there, made the decision, I am not going with you, I'm going to stay and be with my brother and find my way to survive all this. And then Elizabeth and Phillip go back to Russia, and we don't see Martha again. They just kind of assume that they just will go live their lives there together, or I don't know. Their relationship's pretty strained at this point, so it's hard to even tell for sure. Are they going to make it together? Are they really going to stay together now that the facade is over?
Yeah, the producer said, we didn't kill anyone. What we killed was their family. The death of their family was the death at the end of the show.
But the question is, do Philip and Elizabeth, do they stay together in Russia now that they don't have to maintain the falsehood? It seems to me that they're in such different places that they would not be together. But they had little hints, like they still cared for each other. And then maybe when you can put all that spy stuff aside, maybe they could still find a way to make a normal life. But that's kind of where it's left, is what becomes of the family after that? Does Philip and Elizabeth get back together or stay together in Russia? And do the kids... do they just live a normal life and survive and never get caught either? Because the son doesn't know, but the daughter knew about what was going on. Would they be looking for her? That's kind of where it just leaves off, and we'll never know because the series is done.
Well, and Philip tells Stan, "I need, please take care of my son."
Oh, that's right. That's right. Stan actually asked Stan to take care of his son.
And Stan goes, and there's a shot of him talking with his son at his school, and that was
that's
pretty,
right. Actually. So we do know that that leaves still an unknown thing here because, the son never knew about any of it. But with the daughter, with Paige knowing all the secrets that she knows, can she safely still maintain a life in America? And can she actually reconnect with her brother, knowing that they knew that the daughter was in Philip? Stan knew that Paige was right there when the whole thing came down. So, she knows about it. So, yep. A lot of unanswered questions.
Well, so the one big question I would have for you is when Stan is starting to be suspicious, he calls Pastor Tim, who of course they relocated to another country, and he asked Pastor Tim straight up, do you think there's something up with him? And he lies. He says, no, I never noticed anything. Did you think he was gonna lie, or did you think he was gonna tell the truth?
I thought he might allude to something. And
so did I.
He never knew the whole truth either, because
but he knew a lot.
He knew something was going on, but then I think over time, Paige, the daughter, finally decided she was no longer angry with the parents. She wanted to become part of what they were doing. She started to buy into it and basically did lure and fooled the Pastor Tim into knowing what they needed her to tell him. It was just to, keep him, tell him what he wants to know, maintain your relationship, but keep the secret. And she bought into that. So I think that once she did, then clearly there wasn't a tension anymore. She knew how to handle him, and it all worked out. So maybe that was why, because maybe the pastor thought they were bad, but nothing ever became completely to
yeah,
light,
but remember,
so.
Stan tells him, he says, look, I'm going to ask you these questions, and you realize if you don't answer truthfully, you're aiding and abetting a spy. He read him the riot act right before, saying, you better think carefully about what you say here.
I was surprised too. I thought he would say something, or at least say something small, because he could have just had a white lie and say, well, I did think that they were doing something, but not as big of a deal, or something like that. But no, he pretty much said, nope, I didn't notice anything. So I was surprised at that. I was surprised that he didn't say more. So, but yeah, I guess from a satisfaction part of it wasn't what I had kind of, in a sense, hoped for. You always enjoy the big shootout, big climactic finale with lots of guns and action, like a typical action movie would go. But I was okay with it. I actually liked your idea. I think your idea would have been much more fulfilling, because they did have that sense that they left the door open with Martha in Russia and with the kid. And if things didn't work out with Philip and Elizabeth, you did get the sense that Philip could have been truly happy with her if he could have just let his guard down and be himself with her. Yep. But that would have been kind of cool if they killed killed Elizabeth. She would seem like the kind who would die for her country. And so she could have gone out, sacrificed herself, because she'd rather do that than get caught. And so I could have totally bought into that idea that they get away and then he ends up hooking up with the other girl, with Martha. So I would have been okay with that. And I like that ending, actually. If I was the executive and they said, okay, we have two scripts, we're trying to decide which ending. We have this one, where they get away, he just lets them go, and the kids stay in the country and they go back to Russia. Or you can have this one, a big shootout, the wife gets killed, somehow Stan escapes with his daughter, or maybe the daughter's stuck there, who knows. But he goes back and gets to be together with Martha, and everybody's kind of happy. I think I would have liked that version. I would have chosen that one, and that would have been more, I think, just in terms of wrapping ties up, it would have felt a little bit more satisfying. But I was okay with this. It was just more of a subdued ending. Not that I was expecting. I was expecting more fireworks, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't a terrible ending. I've seen much worse than that. So it had a lot, still questions, unanswered questions, which is what most TV series do at the end. Leave you wondering, what does this mean? What's going to happen? Blah, 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 you know, so. But yeah, I was like you. I was sad. It's like after that, when I was in my usual mode of anytime I had that spare moment of, okay, here's my time I can get in an episode or half of an episode, I realized I'm not hitting go back to my American series on my app or my thing anymore. I was like, oh yeah.
Do you know if your sister finished the series? Because you told me.
I don't think she has. I think she had to slow down. They were pretty busy they've been working on their lake house in Idaho. It's been tied up a lot of their weekend time. So I think she slowed down. So I did ask her about it because she actually said, my sister Monica, they started watching the show because they'd listened to an episode where Mike talked about it. It's one of his shows that he liked. So nice to know that, you know, of the 5 people watching and listening out there, they were one of them and actually got some good advice to actually want to watch the show. But I think they took a stop, and I don't know if they're back into it. I haven't asked her since, but that was a few weeks ago that they watched a few episodes but had to take a break.
Well, you'll be happy to know that during the show, I got a text from my friend Dave who said, "Oh man, not Event Horizon, one of my favorite guilty pleasures." So,
really?
Wow. There are some listeners out there.
Okay, that's funny. I'm interested to hear what he had to say to convince us why we hated the movie so much and why he liked it. But that's what's great about this. Everyone's got an opinion. You know, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just kind of how things hit you. But I am kind of in a don't have a show I'm watching right now mode. So I'm trying to decide, do I want to jump into one?
Star Trek Deep Space Nine, baby.
Oh man. I mean, it was
Sounds
Ozark
like the
before
perfect
this,
time.
then the Americans. So I went Ozark, Americans, and now I'm kind of a man without a show. I'm not committed. I see several things that I could jump into, but I'm not committed into a program yet. So I'm trying to find that one, the next show.
Now, in all seriousness, did you give Better Call Saul a try? I know you like Breaking Bad.
I tried to watch the first episode. I didn't get into it, but I don't know. I might have to try to restart on that one because I heard that it keeps getting better once you're hooked into it. And I know there's sometimes that opening show, sometimes the first one takes a while to kind of get sucked in, you know, and like Ozark grabbed me immediately from episode 1. And Americans, pretty much I was in right away. Even Game of Thrones, you kind of forced me to watch that one when we were on our retreat. And I think had we not done it that way, I don't know if I would have jumped in, because I remember right away with Game of Thrones, the first thought was like, who the hell are all these people? I'm confused and too many names and places. I'm not quite getting the big picture until once
here's
you
a
do,
question.
it makes more sense.
What about Fringe? I showed you some Fringe episodes last year, and it's hard to gauge if you were pulled in or not on that show. By the look on your face, you were not.
I'm not jumping crazy, ready to go into that full on. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but I didn't get bit by the bug yet. So
it's got the disturbing stuff you like. And it's a little sci-fi.
That has some disturbing stuff, but not as disturbing as on the level of this.
Well, you didn't watch that much though. I mean, it's a 5-season series, so.
Yeah, true.
I have to say, Brett and I have been working through the X-Files from the 90s, the TV show The X-Files, which they did a wonderful job upgrading that show to a very nice high-def version. I mean, they cropped it for 16:9 widescreen. It looks great. It's if it wasn't for some of the film grain, you'd think you were watching a modern show. But we're hitting season 3 on that, and boy, just like I said, season 3, it is running on all cylinders. It is a great show. The production value is up there, blowing stuff up with explosions at levels I'd see in movies. It's good. I'm really enjoying it. It's a good show. You've watched the X-Files.
I watched plenty. I didn't watch some seasons back, front to back, but I watched plenty of seasons, and yeah, it was a good show. It was a good show. It is a good show. But yeah, I'm a man without a ship right now. I'm kind of floating out there trying to find what my next guilty pleasure addiction is going to be, and right now it's just watching movies with the family right now, but I don't have that go-to, oh, this is a good time to watch another episode of.
Well, fans, this is your chance. Write some messages to us in the comments. Tell Norb what he should watch next.
I know Mike's already made some suggestions, and I'm going to take them into consideration. So,
Star Trek Deep Space Nine? Okay, sounds good.
So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to get into what the next one will be, because I do enjoy having that hook. There's something about wanting to see the next one, but don't know yet. Or I might have to get back on the ones I stopped. Like I was big time on The Walking Dead, and I've kind of just fallen off this past few months.
That's true, yeah.
I was up to date for a while, and then I kind of lost it in this last year, so I could go back and catch up on that series. And I know you too have been trying to catch back up on that one. So it's hard.
Did you watch the show Westworld? I know Rob really liked Westworld.
I know nothing about that. I have heard people talk about that too. There's a bunch of shows that, you just hear thrown around, names of shows that people always talk about. There's that show with it's like a biker gang or something.
Yeah, I don't remember the name. I know. I know what you're talking about.
I can't even remember the name. It's like on the tip of my tongue. I can see it. I can see the logo. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway. There's a bunch like that, which I know are kind of those, tons of people have seen it and love it. And I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. So I'm looking, I'm thinking, my mind's open, feeling it out. But we'll see. You got any surprises to go with this?
I do. I have a surprise. In the spirit of the 80s, when this show took place, I really liked... When I was watching The Americans, I always liked looking in the backgrounds when they're in a mini mart or in a restaurant or in a store. I always liked looking at the product placement to see how the set decorators would dress up this set to make it look 80s and authentic. And it was always fun to look at the older products. So in the spirit of that, I have this old product that would have been in the show. This is a Super Pac-Man rub-off game stickers and bubble gum. Here, I'll hold it up for you here, Norb, so you can see. Okay. I picked this up at a pinball show that I helped run. There was a vendor there that was selling these old sticker collections from the 80s, and this is sealed. Sealed. You can see the back there. Ooh. It has not been opened. So you know what? I'm going to open it on the air, and we're going to see what's inside.
You're going to devalue it. You're going to devalue it before our very eyes.
I know, and here we go. I'm opening it right now, and I've just ripped it. I devalued it. Devalued. So let's see.
It went from $2 to 50
what we got in here. Oh, look at that. We got some chewing gum. Can I get that to go far? There it is, an actual authentic stick of chewing gum from the 80s. I don't know. Someone took a bite. Oh, the piece is, I think, still in the package. So I am not going to eat this. But
that gum was bad vintage. Even back then.
It's got that white powder on it. I always remember it had the white powder. I guess
the gum
that
was never very good. It was always really
it was, yeah, you're
nasty,
right. It was
not very good flavor. And 30, 40 years later, I'm sure it's really going to be in good shape.
All right, so we have a sticker called Join the Pack Attack. There you go. Join the Pack Attack. And this is a managed by Super Pac-Man official expert. On the back, it even has a design your own Pac-Man poster contest. Win Coleco Pac-Man games, Pac-Man t-shirts, Pac-Man hats. There's an address, Port Chester, New York. You can send in. Huh. I've never heard of that.
You should try to send it in and see if you can still win it.
So here's another sticker. I'm hungry. And the ghost says, get lost. There you go. See that, Norb? Mm-hmm. And on the back, another advertisement for the Pac-Man poster contest with a different happy kid with a big oversized Pac-Man hat on his head. That hat is a little big for that kid. Oh, and then I do remember these. They were called rub-off games. It's like a scratch, like lottery tickets of today.
Get the coins, scratch scratch lottery tickets.
You basically just rub off and follow Pac-Man. So there's the directions to the Super Pac-Man rub-off game on the back. And there were 3 of these in here, so I could play the game 3 times. And that is all that's in there. There's just the extra little bit of gum that was broken off in the corner. So
I dare
there
you
you
to
have
eat the
it.
gum. I dare to eat the gum right on camera.
No thanks.
Oh, come on, man. I mean, how bad can it be? It's just sugar.
Nope. I'll pass.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, you really want me to, huh? You really want me to? Fine. Fine, I'll eat it. Okay, fine. I'll eat it. Oh my God. Is that crunching? Oh,
Is that your tooth breaking?
it's like eating pieces of cardboard.
Gum shouldn't crunch like that.
Oh, this tastes terrible.
What does it taste like? What flavor is it?
Ugh.
Bubble gum?
It tastes like cough medicine. Ugh. I gotta spit this out. Ugh. That is
This
awful.
this could be the highlight of our show right here.
Oh, man.
Forget about putting that this is the review on the Americans. Just put Mike eats 35-year-old gum.
Look at
at
my
the top.
face. My face is just... Ugh.
It sounded awesome. I thought half your teeth broke off when you chewed into it.
Oh, that was so bad.
Oh, it's so funny. I'm glad we
There
recorded.
you go,
I'm glad did that.
Norb.
That was worth it. That made me happy.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. I got my good laugh for the day.
this is one of those things where you're desperate to get this taste out of your mouth, but you can't. It's still there.
Oh, man.
Man, that
funny.
was terrible.
Well, on that tasty note, I think we'll sign off. That was our review of the TV show The Americans and the Super Pac-Man Gum review by Mike. Thank you for watching this.
You owe me, Norb.
I'll eat something else in exchange someday.
Oh, man.
For those of you who are watching on our YouTube channel, thank you for your support. Like this video, share it, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. We really appreciate your support. And of course, for those of you who are listening on the podcast, please continue to do so and send us a note in our email address listed below or in the comments section, and just let us know what you think of the show and give me an idea of what I should watch next, or maybe what you'd like me to eat, since that really would put Mike through the ringer on that one. So
I'm going to have to get you a bottle of bacon soda or one of those funky perspiration sodas.
Maybe that's what this show should be. We shouldn't talk about movies and stuff. We'll just start eating nasty
That's
stuff.
right.
And see what the reaction
Maybe we'll
is.
get a
I think
big
lot more
fan
views.
base. They won't care about what we have to say. They just want to watch us eat this nasty
Let's
stuff.
just eat and suffer. No, that might be the ticket. All right. I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the Watchmen.
Thank you for watching, and thanks for watching me eat that horrendous 40-year-old chewing gum. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Later. Thanks for watching The Watchmen.
Please click on here to watch other episodes, and be sure to hit that like button too.
And please subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll always be alerted to any future episodes.
It really helps us out, and we appreciate it.
We'll see you next time. And remember, we'll be watching.